Hey guys, welcome to Spirit Pig. This is the show that explores how to live a fulfilled life. I'm Duncan CJ, and today I'm talking with David Wagner. David is an internationally recognized spiritual teacher, and many people seek him out to learn how to meditate, and he's considered one of the best teachers alive today. He has dedicated his life to the exploration of personal transformation, and over the last 21 years has worked with people from all walks of life, including military personnel, combat veterans, Fortune 500 executives, Hollywood actors, Grammy Award-winning musicians, and even outlaw bikers. Most recently, David has taken on the mission of serving the transformational needs of men, and he is the author of the book Backbone, the modern man's ultimate guide to purpose, passion, and power. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Wow, that was such a good introduction. I'm like excited to hear what I'm going to say.
No, shit. Don't let me down. Taking things way back, you and your three brothers got into drinking and drugs from a really young age. And Fortunately, your alcohol and drug problem was the worst. I love that phrase, fortunately. It made me laugh because could you explain why was it a fortunate thing that your problem was the worst?
Well, because in my case, mine was the kind that people don't live very long with. My brothers as well as my parents were both pretty functioning alcoholics or drug addicts, you could say. People that could use enough drugs and alcohol to sort of render them unable to live a really full life or be really good parents or that sort of thing. But not so bad that they're, out bar fighting or getting locked up or overdosing or that sort of thing. But because maybe I got into it when I was so young, I was much younger than my brothers. By the time I was in high school, I was one of those kids, if you had these kids in high school, that like nobody really expected me to live through high school. I was that kid. And because it was so severe, then that led me to getting help. And, I ended up getting sober and just on my own, we're talking like 1987. So those were the days when rehab started coming into fashion, you could say. A lot of kids were getting sent to rehab. I never went to rehab. My parents actually used to argue with me and try to keep me from going to AA meetings. I just went on my own and just went to 12-step programs and got sober. And that's what really introduced me to spirituality and the path that I'm on. So that's why I say fortunately, because instead of being drawn out over the course of a kind of semi-shitty life, my addiction sort of peaked and popped very early on.
So we were talking, 14, 15, 16, God, that young?
16 going on 17, yeah.
God. And so that led to you, I think you spent most of your 20s, you lived in India, you were living in ashrams, like studying all like the ancient wisdoms and stuff. How was that? Like as a 20-year-old, like was this, you were properly living it, like weren't you?
Yeah, by the time I was 25, I think that's when I first sort of went to India and started, living in ashrams and dedicating myself full time to that. And it was great. Also keep in mind that, imagine male listeners that, from the time that I was 24 until I was 27, let's say 28, I was totally celibate. And during some of those times, a great period of those times, I would practice something called brahmacharya, and your listeners can just look that up. But anyway, it was an intense time that was very unusual, for a young man in his 20s to be doing.
So what was that? Because there was a sort of a course of events or something which changed the whole direction. Was it like 2007 or something? I think it was around about that sort of time. What was that? Like, how come you were suddenly living that holy spiritual life? And then what kind of shifted all that?
Well, Duncan, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like from the time that I was about 20 until, well into my 30s, my main focus in life was really my spiritual well-being, you could say. And everything that I did in my life was focused around that. That was my main goal. was to sort of get free in a spiritual way. And then it happened. Like all of that kind of paid off. But then when it happened, I learned this thing that happens, which is then you don't become ultra spiritual. Then you just become ultra real, you could say, because the things that make us like a spiritual guy or a spiritual lady or whatever, oftentimes those are sort of practices. Those are things that we're doing as a kind of medicine to help ourselves in some way. Whether it's being vegetarian or practicing celibacy or, following these disciplines that give us that sort of spiritual way of being. Sometimes it's also just bullshit. I mean, sometimes it's just like the way that people carry themselves and it's an act. Yeah. But what I discovered was that, when I had that big breakthrough around 2007, the breakthrough was just like coming back into a super authentic me. And free from me in a certain way too, but I was also free from the need to walk such a tight line in my spiritual life and in my practice. And I actually realized that a lot of the stuff that I was doing in the name of spirituality had become sort of bullshit or dogmatic, and so then I just started exploring me again, and just being this guy from Peoria, Illinois, who likes to listen to Black Sabbath and ride motorcycles and all that kind of stuff was no longer a conflict. It probably was never a conflict, but for a while I needed to put that stuff aside to sort of heal, you could say. And then once that stuff was mostly healed, then I could just embrace life and all of its bigness and it not be a conflict with my deep spirituality.
Yeah, I love it. I was one your work.
No one's ever asked me that, by the way. People ask. This is like a very unusual question for somebody to ask me, so I appreciate that.
I liked it because I saw one of the based on what you were saying just there at the end. Your work was described. I can't remember who said it, but it's been described as no bullshit spirituality, which I like that idea of no bullshit spirituality. Do you think that's a fair description?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I know how much bullshit I still bring, but so it's hard to say that with a clean heart. But yeah, I mean, that's how I was introduced to spirituality, Duncan. All the way back when I went to AA in Peoria. Those first spiritual teachers of mine were really no bullshit spirituality gurus, man. I mean, these were just recovering alcoholics, and some other men that I found to mentor me back then. But, it's like for people that spirituality is not an option, it's not like a fashion thing. It's not like your friends are doing it, so I'm going to do it. When you're learning to pray and meditate so that you can get through another 24 hours without calling your dealer, or, learning to pray and meditate to like pull yourself out of just like a totally psychotic anxiety attack, it really teaches you how to pray and meditate in a way that just, going to the yoga studio and, ringing the gong just can never do. We used to say that religion is to save your soul and spirituality is to save your ass. And, so that was my introduction to that. And that has continued to be the case for me. And it's the way that I work with, most of the people that I work with, in my coaching programs and my retreats and stuff like that. They don't come because there's any cool factor to my events or whatever. I'm just not that guy yet. I mean, maybe I will be at some point, but most of the people that come to me are people that, they're in some shit and, they need to get out of it. And also here's the other important thing to say is that, when I tell that story, the typical hero's journey thing or whatever that everybody has to tell, if they're in this line of work, I don't want to misrepresent, because I was this, 14, 15-year-old little juvenile delinquent, kid, played in punk rock bands and, just did drugs and fucked off and, lucky to survive and all that. That's the dramatic part of the story, you could say. And then I had this revelation, and then I got sober and whatever. But the truth is, Duncan, is that all of this, all of this that I am now and what I'm doing now and who I really am, I mean, this is really an authentic version of me. That seed was there in that little unhappy kid, all the way back. So it's, you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah, it's not like a
that
before.
was,
It's not like a before, and then this is like a new you. This was always you, but you had the bullshit covering it all up.
yeah, exactly. And so, that's why I say, that I work with people that are in like deep shit, but they're like people who underneath that deep shit really know that there's a better potential for them. Because there's plenty of people that are just like lost and, just in deep shit. And it's if I really wanted to work with them, I could just like, go to, set up a table outside Walmart or something and, just like be a preacher, but that just doesn't work. I work with people that are like in shit, but that also, have enough of a spark within them to seek help and to really know that there's a way to kind of come out of it.
And I love that. And what kind of what's taking this turn into? Because like I mentioned there in the introduction, you got your new book like Backbone, and it's teaching like modern man, how to be a man. But like, what are the main problems or concerns with modern man today?
Well, Duncan, men don't have an Oprah. There's no Super Soul Sunday for men. And I just say that because those sorts of things, and really most of the new age world and personal transformation world is so predominantly for women. And that's because women have had to make this big evolution, over the past 50, 60 years. And totally change how they are in society, how they are in families. And they've needed a lot of support to do that. And so then now, 2015, we have yoga and Pilates and meditation and Deepak Chopra and, all of these resources where people, mostly women, can heal themselves and empower themselves and learn about the law of attraction and all this sort of thing. But while that evolution was happening with women, most men didn't take part in that. I mean, there's always some men, probably men like you or men like me, that were just evolutionary oriented, that are going to seek out stuff no matter what. But, the thing is, and why I say Oprah, and maybe I'm just like being super American when I talk about that. Maybe nobody even knows who Oprah is, but
Yeah, we do. Definitely.
Yeah. It's because Oprah was able to, not just her, but the Oprah Chopra is what I call it, the Oprah Chopra syndrome, was able to reach all kinds of really mainstream women, So now just about any girl coming up has some sort of an idea of empowerment. It might not be a great idea. It might not be the deepest idea, whatever. But most little girls grow up today thinking, I need not to be a disempowered woman when I grow up. What kind of empowered woman? Well, there's lots of different versions of that. But I need not to just be disempowered and stuff my dreams and be subservient to men. Boys, on the other hand, we don't have all of that. We just have don't get in trouble. Be successful in some way, be able to pay your bills. And when you entertain yourself, again, try not to get in trouble. And that's the bar, that's the only thing that we need to get above to be considered a successful man, in our society. And so we have this thing where, women are going off to the transformational weekend and their husbands are sitting home, drinking beer and jacking off to porn, or like sitting and, watching TV on the couch, or, whatever. Not necessarily, mowing the lawn, whatever. They're not necessarily like doing self-destructive things, but they're not at the transformational weekend. And most just ordinary dudes don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. Most ordinary dudes are not listening to this podcast. Because they just, from 1,000 feet away, it just doesn't seem like it's for them. It seems lavender and kind of feminized, and like it means that you're going to have to take off your shoes and kind of like, open your heart and, bend over, like literally the biggest thing in the world right now is yoga. And the main thing that you do in yoga is bend over in a room full of people. And that just like goes so contrary to like the masculine psyche. So, I don't even remember what the original question. Oh, what are the problems with the modern men? So anyway, there's just that is lacking. Just that vitamin of personal transformation stuff is just lacking within the sort of Western civilization. Just within the oxygen, there's just a lack of that for men. So because of that, men just generally, I just see them being very passive and lacking passion and kind of just, like lumpy and floppy and, and helpless. It's not even like they're angry and, throwing bricks through windows and stuff like that. They're just counting the days off, just getting older and just sitting in front of their computer, living a vicarious life. So what we're really trying to do, with this work and, everything, the book, the coaching work that I do, the retreats, all that stuff, my courses, and touring, everything is really just to reach out to men and just, start a conversation and try to present a paradigm for transformational work that is masculine, where they don't have to take off their shoes, they don't have to bend over, all that stuff. They don't have to sit on the floor, they don't have to look into your eyes, like all of that stuff where, they can learn how to just have a conversation with other men or be mentored by another man. That doesn't have to trigger off all their father issues or whatever. That doesn't have to, make them into something feminine. So that's kind of the short version of it.
And you talked about like, because I mean, one I guess like by opening up this conversation, you kind of like rather than having to have without shoes, like you're trying to like normalize it and actually encourage the conversation, encourage the questioning. But you discuss the importance of men identifying their mission in life and this idea of like finding, working out what their purpose is. Like how do you kind of suggest, obviously if you've got the books, the mentoring, that's great, but how do you kind of suggest people go about even starting to figure that out?
Well, look at your pain. Like look at your life and just see on a scale of 1 to 10, like any listener can just do this quiz. This is like something from my course, but I'll just give you this exercise right now. Any listener, you just make a list from 1 to 10 and you put 10 categories in your life. And, there's things like work, romantic relationships, sexuality, money, physical fitness, spirituality. Anyway, there's 10 of them. You can come up with the rest of them. And then just do a brutally honest assessment on a scale of 1 to 10 of a few things, like how well are you doing in those things? Like how well are they actually showing up? How, what's what I call your fuck yeah factor, which is like how much you can just take that thing and be like, fuck yeah, that's me, everything from your wife, you know, to your body, you know, to the town that you live in. You know, do you wake up in the morning like I do and just, you know, look out the door and just be like, yes, this is the best place in the world I could live. And just to look at all of those things. How well are you doing? How's it showing up? What's your fuck yeah factor? And then how true is it for you? And then just give yourself a score. And to whatever degree your score is below 100, or let's be you know, realistic, below 85, there's going to be some suffering, and there's going to be some settling, and there's going to be some sort of closet syndrome, you know, like gay men who live in the closet and pretend to be someone else. You know, they suffer so much. Well, you know, gay men aren't the only men that, you know, have to come out of the closet. You know, a lot of us, to some degree or another, are also just living some other life. We're living, you know, the life that our dad wanted us to live, or we're living the opposite life that our dad wanted to live, to say fuck you to our dad, or, you know, whatever. But we don't know ourselves. So, you know, we don't really know how to craft that life. So that's the first thing, is I just really try to get men in touch with their pain and their discontent. What a new age thing to say. I specialize in helping men find their pain and discontent, you know, faster, more effectively than any other new age teacher. But seriously, that's the no bullshit part of it, you know, because otherwise then the practices, the new age stuff can become like analgesics, you know? It's like, you know, a lot of women do this today where, you know, they're miserable in their marriage. They're not into their life, but as long as they can get to that yoga class 4 times a week, they can get through, you know? It's like their husband's a douchebag and doesn't take care of their emotional needs, but then they go online and watch my videos, or, you know, go to Deepak Chopra or whatever, to kind of like soothe them in some way. I don't want to soothe anybody. I want to fucking rub salt in your wounds, so that you can like wake up and take care of some of that stuff. And yeah, so that's the first step. And then once they're able to actually look at it and see, well, no, actually, I'm not really living my life. Then the question could be, well, what is my life? What is my vision? Who am I really? And, you know, if I was really living a life that was true, you know, what might that look like?
Yeah, because then, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it's I mean, does that yeah, you got to identify the problem. You can't really build on it unless you work out, okay, this is clearly not working. This is not my life. It's not where I want to be.
Yeah.
And then boom, then the next stage is to actually build up from there.
And the thing is it's important for men to learn a little bit of nuance with that, because again, what we're raised to look out for is failure and danger, right? So like if a man is making money and the marriage is not like domestic violence, you know, then okay, you know, and there's not like, I don't know, wildfires in their yard or something like that, then they think that they're okay. But what I try to introduce is this idea that, you know, basic idea in all of my training programs is that you deserve the best of life and life deserves the best of you. I believe this is true for every single human being because it's an equation, you see. If we are really bringing the best of us to our life, then we deserve the very best of life. If we're not bringing the best of us, then we deserve what we get. But if we are willing to bring the best of us, I really believe that like every man, woman, and child deserves to just have the very best. And so like to introduce that idea that no, it's not just like, is your marriage failing? It's like, is your marriage fucking turning you on? It's not, is your job paying the bills and it's okay and I get okay benefits and I get good. No, like, do you get out of bed in the morning and feel like, yes, as a man of honor, I am putting on my work outfit and going into this job with pride, like that's the standard. And that's a whole new thing for most men when I talk to them, because we're just keeping our heads down and, just trying not to get fired and, not to get caught with our porn stash and,
It's coasting.
meanwhile,
it's just
yeah.
what it's just getting. I think being comfortable or coasting. That's like you're saying, from the surface. You got the job. Everything seems like it's kind of okay. You're ticking all the boxes, but it's not. If it's just coasting and comfortable, then you need to take it up a level.
And that's how this midlife crisis thing happens. That a man gets into his middle of his life and freaks out. Because he has been settling, and again, without a lot of reflection or mentoring or whatever, then he just freaks out. He's like, oh, well, fuck it. I've always wanted to have a motorcycle, or, I've always wanted a car, and now I have the money, and now I'm going to do it. God damn it. And I'm going to fuck my secretary too, because I've been thinking about that for 20 years. And they do this kind of spasmodic freak out and do all that stuff without consciousness. And then oftentimes they'll get in trouble. They'll either get caught and, get busted, or they'll, spend too much money, or they'll just look like a buffoon and they'll see that themselves and whatever. And then they just go back into their shell. It's like, okay, I had my midlife crisis. Now I'm going back, It's like when you let the dog off the leash and he just like freaks out and like runs all around the neighborhood and then, comes back with his tail between his legs. I'm interested in having, like talking to a man like you in his 20s, or a man in his 30s, and sort of really starting to look at some of these deep, deep questions. And, I think just like live in that way where you're doing what you want to be doing with the people that you're wanting to do it with. You're enjoying life, and you're fulfilling a mission. The thing about the midlife crisis is it's almost always entertainment oriented. Whereas those things are important to a man. The thing that really feeds a man is his need to accomplish missions and to have a purpose. And that's the thing that at the end of the day, really helps a man to feel deeply happy, is when he knows that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And I think you were just saying that. Ties in the word that came up a few times when I was reading some of your stuff. I watched a couple of other interviews and stuff. Was this idea of ownership? And taking ownership and charge of their lives, and it's just so crucial. And so, it was interesting you hearing that, just being like, actually, no one else is going to do it for you. No one's going to come along and be like, actually, here's your ideal life. You got to actually take that ownership.
Yeah. And like research it. Like men on the internet, instead of just entertaining yourselves, definitely stop playing video games. I'm just saying that like straight off the bat. Just stop it. It's a waste of time. It fries your brain. It just makes you into a worse person every minute that you spend playing video games. I love to say extreme shit like that. Anyway, use your time, if you must sit in front of the internet for as long as you do, use that time to research yourself. Like research men that you admire, like men from history or men from the public eye or whatever that like you admire. Research stuff that turns you on, aside from sexual stuff. Research, if you were gonna, drive whatever vehicle you could to work every day, what would that be? Would it be a, minivan? Would it be a tank? Would it be a helicopter gunship? Would it be a motorcycle? Would it be a bicycle that you could be in good enough shape to ride to work? Just knowing what those sorts of things are you're learning about yourself. Where would you live if you could live anywhere?
It's almost like vision boarding, isn't it? I guess you have your
Exactly.
exactly. Rather than rather than printing off and putting it on a board, like I guess you're mentally like thinking different facets of your life. Okay, how does my health look? How does my home look? How does my holidays look? And then you're kind of creating that picture, and you can see it. It's tactile. You can it's got form, and it makes it more real, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's what he's doing. That's what that man is doing. After his wife has gone to bed and he's slumped in his office chair staring at the computer screen for hours, that's what he's doing. He just doesn't even realize it. He's in a cage and he sees the light of the screen of his computer is like a crack in that wall. And he's just looking to get out, and he just doesn't, that's the thing about the internet. Because you can find a video game on it to completely waste your time, or you can find porn on it to entertain yourself in that way for a minute. But you can also find stuff like this podcast. You can find, like courses that they can uplift you. You can find amazing videos of TED Talks and just so many things. And so, yeah, it's an interesting thing that we're talking about right now. I've never talked about this before, but I just have that vision so clearly of like that crack of light coming through the dungeon wall, and if a man does it skillfully, he can find his way out through that crack. A lot of people do. I mean, that's how people find me. That's how people end up doing my thing, for sure.
I love the quote that you started your book with, by Thomas Jefferson. I prefer dangerous freedom to peaceful slavery. Yeah. So it's just like boom, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
A couple of speed round questions, which we finish off all them with, is but like great to hear your thoughts. What does a fulfilled life mean to you?
A fulfilled life for me is a life where the whole of me has expression. And I don't mean like artistic expression. I don't mean in that sense. I just mean that each of us is a whole person. And, we have these different aspects to ourselves. The book, I talk about the king, the warrior, the mystic, the lover, these kind of archetypal sides, the wild man. And so a fulfilled life is a life that has room for all of those different aspects of us to express themselves. And by express themselves, I mean like actually like have some thing to chew on. Where like the work life that we're doing, it's hard, like not that it's like it has to be hard, but that it's like challenging for us. We have to like get bigger to do our work in some way. But it also is excellent and has great influence on whatever it is that we're doing. And it has good rewards, that our love life, where we can really be ourselves and our fullness and our sexuality can be really expressed and enjoyed. And our spirituality is really robust and full. And as men, one of the things that is really important is that warrior aspect that's not going to be called on us in most cases in a modern life. We can just live our whole modern life on a couch. But men especially really need to go out of their way and do some hard shit, like do some hard physical shit, do some little dangerous stuff, do some adventure, kind of do things where our heart pounds and our senses become, super focused. Yeah, so I could go on and on about a fulfilled life. I love that question, but that's a short story.
And what's one thing all our listeners can do today that will have a massive positive effect on their lives?
I think if it's just one thing, that's a tough question. If you asked me three things, it would be easier. But if it's one thing,
you can cheat if you want.
No, I like the challenge, but to just do that personal assessment. Do that exercise that I mentioned in the beginning of just making a list of 10 categories of your life, and just doing like a brutally honest assessment of how good it is, how true it is, and how much you feel passion in that area. And then just whatever your score is, just know that you can totally, it's not unrealistic to have a 95. And it just takes some work and some tune up. But just doing the exercise is not going to do it. That's just a first step. It's a road. It's a path.
I think you should look. Yeah, I think that's something you can look on. Actually, that's quite a fun challenge because you're crafting. You're crafting your ideal life, isn't it? So this isn't something to be like, oh shit, like I got to do this stupid exercise. It's like, no, let's design. It's like lifestyle design. You're designing the perfect life. So yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there any books or resources which have changed or had a massive impact on you?
Yeah, a few. I think all men should at least try to read Iron John, which is sort of like this seminal work by Robert Bly about men that certainly had a big impact on me. I think Tony Robbins' work is really great. I just smile and laugh when I say that because, like, in a way, he's like such like a pop psychology icon, but his stuff is actually super deep. I didn't even look at his stuff until I had been on the spiritual path for like 25 years. And then looking at it, just really see that it has some really good medicine in it. There's so many things.
Those are two
like
good
that.
ones. I mean, I know what you mean. Like it's quite funny. Even when I was doing stuff in sort of different niches and stuff like that, it's crazy how much Tony's name comes up. It doesn't matter. He's literally just like everyone's like, oh fuck yeah, Tony, he's the best.
Here's the thing. I really believe that Tony Robbins is an angel. I really do. I really think that he is just a being that God has sent to uplift the world. And he's not the only one. It's funny. Yeah, like I've never gone to any of his things. I've never hung out with him. I met him once, but I really believe that because you just look at, because what I talk about for men is thump, like finding your thump. And your thump is your potency, your impact, and your influence. And man, Tony Robbins has got some serious thump, like just his influence and how much he's, like you talk to almost anyone that's in this field and in some way, shape or another, he has impacted us. But you know what? Here's the thing is that all of those resources are fine and good, but the thing that'll help people more than anything, especially men, is to just like put down the resources and just go outside. Just go out into some wilderness, whatever the closest wilderness is, even if it's just like a really deep park in your city. You can probably find some wilderness around Berlin somewhere, or any major city. But just like go out in the wilderness, by yourself, or with some other men and just be quiet. Just be in silence and just, allow that to impact you and allow that to be a mirror for how true you are, because, before you said crafting the perfect life, and it's not that. It's not the perfect life. It's crafting the truest life. Because, your true life might be really imperfect by somebody else's standards. Mine sure is. It's what it is it's like living your truth, so when I'm out here in the canyon and, I'm hanging out with a sage bush, a white sage bush or something like that. You can't say that it's perfect, because this side of it is lopsided and that part of it has been eaten up by animals and, but it's totally true. It's just 1,000% sage bush doing its thing. Totally fragrant, awesome. And so that sage bush then becomes a beautiful guru and mirror for me to see how true I'm coming. So of all the resources and books and courses, and definitely buy my book for yourself and all your friends. Take all my courses. But the most beneficial thing that you can do is just go outside and just be quiet and just let that teach you something.
Great advice. I love it. Last but not least, how can people stay in touch, find out about you, your book and stuff? Where can we send them?
Yeah, davidhwagner.com is the website. Don't forget the H. It's very important. David H. Wagner. Also on Instagram, also on Facebook, Twitter. It's all David H. Wagner. We're sort of getting it all together. For men's specific stuff, you can check out Men's Revolution on Instagram, wildmanuniversity.com. You can also get that through my website. And on Facebook, it's Wildman or Mildman. Wildman or Mildman Facebook page. You can check that out.
Amazing.
That's just about everything.
This has been such an interesting conversation. It's really enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. This is great. You asked some great questions.